You're tuned to 105.5 FM, 1320 AM, cable TV channel 25, and worldwide at country.am. And every Friday at 11:05, we have a representative from the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office. Usually it's Sheriff Derek Palmer, but we have a special guest today, Chief Deputy Mark Thigpen. Good morning.
Good morning, Tim. How are you today?
Doing great. Now, this isn't your first time on the radio. You look forward to it every time.
I do.
Yes.
We've talked about that before, and you and I have that gift of
gab.
Yeah, so it makes it easy. It's enjoyable.
All right. It's been a pretty busy week, I understand, this week.
It has. The sheriff's out of town, and you know what happens when the boss is gone? It just goes all to pieces.
All right, let's talk about some of the things that have been going on this week. I understand there was a stabbing up in Andrews earlier. Was it this week?
That was actually on Saturday. Saturday afternoonish, up in the Junaluska area. Yes, we had a young man who there was an altercation at his home, and he was stabbed in the side. Ended up having to be airlifted to a Tennessee hospital for treatment. Mm-hmm. Of course, that called out the cavalry. We worked the crime scene, and we were very fortunate. Got on it pretty quick, and within just a couple hours, we had the suspect in custody and charged. That was a Mr. Paul Wooten, and as of yesterday, he was still in the detention center pending his upcoming charges.
The gentleman who was stabbed, is he okay health-wise now?
The last that I had checked, he would make a full recovery. I think he may have been released from the hospital yesterday, but I'm not 100% on that. But they thought he would get out fairly quickly and would make a full recovery.
Very good. There was another situation in Marble, something about a standoff on Friday.
That happened early Friday morning about 8 o'clock. Cherokee County EMS received a call for a elderly gentleman in medical distress, and when they arrived on scene, the gentleman became aggressive with them, and upon some discussion with the family members, one of the paramedics asked if there was any weapons in the room where the gentleman was at, and they replied to the medics that yes, there was, that he did have some weapons in there. So they retreated out and called for the sheriff's office assistant. When our first deputy arrived on scene, the gentleman had retrieved a .270 rifle from a closet and was sitting on the bed with it in his lap. Due to his medical conditions, he was not totally coherent and in his full cognitive rights. So he got a little aggressive with the deputy. He called for backup. The gentleman actually was waving the rifle around some, so they backed out. Myself and some of the other detectives arrived on scene. We secured the home, made a call to Cherokee SWAT for their SWAT team to assist us if needed. But fortunately, due to his medical condition, the gentleman basically just laid down on the bed, almost in a medical, not like a diabetic coma. It wasn't a diabetic issue, but it was a similar medical issue. And at that time, one of our detectives and patrol sergeant was able to go in and retrieve the rifle and get the medics in to get him help, and he was transported to the hospital for his medical needs.
You know, that's one thing I really haven't thought about before. I understand with law enforcement, if you pull someone over or you're going to a call, you never know what you're walking into. But I haven't really thought about that from a paramedic standpoint. They don't know what they're walking to either.
You know, it's very true, Tim, and we try to. Our dispatch does a really, really good job of trying to sort out the calls, and we have a process for a lot of the calls. Overdoses, anything that's a psychiatric suicide type situation where they will have the medical personnel and the first responders stage until a law enforcement unit can arrive on scene. But we had an incident very similar yesterday. They received a call for, and I can't remember if it was male or female, but someone with a head injury. And when medics arrived on scene, it turns out that they had been the victim of a domestic assault, and the assaulter was still on scene, and there had been a weapon involved. So, they rolled into that situation thinking they were just going to give medical aid to somebody, and it turns out to be a whole different situation. Like I say, our dispatch tries very diligently to screen those calls, but
Right.
Sometimes eliciting that information from the caller is very hard, especially over the phone, and especially when someone's upset and distraught.
There's a lot of emotion going into that 911 call.
That's correct.
And a lot of times people aren't thinking correctly or coherently.
That's exactly right. They get very distraught and very emotional, and the only thing they know is they want help right then. And we have occasions where our dispatchers they're asking the series of questions for the information they need to know, and the caller will actually get upset at them. And even though they've told them we have an ambulance on the way, or we have a deputy on the way, or whatever the case may be, they're still asking questions to evaluate that scene before personnel get there, and they will get very upset. Why are you asking me these questions? You need to be getting me help.
Right.
What they don't know is the other dispatcher in the room is on the radio with those appropriate response people, and it's all taking place, but they don't know that, they don't
Right.
see that, they don't hear that, and it gets pretty tense on the dispatcher side of things as well, when they can't determine what's really going on and make the appropriate calls. And sometimes they'll just err on the side of caution and say, the things we're hearing in the background on the phone, or some of the statements made, we think you need to stage, or slow down, let EMS wait for law enforcement to get on scene first. But they really do. They walk into a lot of situations that they really don't know what they're walking into.
The sheriff and I have talked about that before, the 911 calls too, that people do get upset with the dispatch. And the dispatch has to operate as efficiently as possible. And there's not always time to inject Southern charm. Hello, how are you doing today? They have to pretty much get straight to the question. It's an interview process, and sometimes they have to talk fast because they have other phones ringing too, and you don't have 100 people sitting there answering calls.
That's exactly right. Probably 99% of the complaints that come in for a rude dispatcher, when the sheriff or I goes back and looks at the call log for what was going on at that time, and then pulls the audio tapes, where we can actually go back and listen to every phone call that's coming in, every radio traffic that's going out. Like on a snow day when there's been multiple accidents, or even not in a snow day, but you have a serious accident out here on the 4-lane, you have 30, 40 people that make that 911 call. They're already busy with the fire and EMS and the law enforcement. And so a lot of times it's, 911, what's your emergency? If you're calling about the accident, we're already on top of it, and they hang up on them. Or sometimes they have to say, 911, what's your emergency? And if the people say, well, I want to, it's not an emergency situation, they have to put them on hold. And they don't understand that you've got 2, sometimes 3 people in that room that's answering a host of 911 lines, administrative lines, fire personnel on the radio, EMS personnel on the radio, and multiple law enforcement agencies. And we even remind our deputies at times when they call into dispatch and they get a little irritated because the dispatcher doesn't answer them as quick as they think. Right. What else is going on while you're, how many 911 phones are ringing, how many other EMS traffic or fire traffic is going on, and they have to prioritize and just like you said, try to make it as efficient as possible.
It's not an easy job. I did the Facebook Live video from the dispatch center too, because I just wanted folks to see what was going on inside there, and that wasn't an especially busy day, but phones started ringing. But when it gets really busy, I could imagine the chaos between the dispatchers there, because they are juggling a lot of different things at once.
Yeah, it's really amazing when you think about the number of calls that come in that center, the amount of radio traffic, and on every single day they're monitoring the fire frequency, Valley Town's fire frequency, the sheriff's office. We have a state radio system called Viper that we're using. They're on it. So just in listening to the radio, they're listening to about 5 different radio channels their entire shift. And they try to select, depending on if we station them on different consoles, like the law, we call one the law and one's the fire and EMS. But they have to do double duty. So today, if I'm on the law console, I try to tune out fire and EMS into my headset. But when it gets real busy, they've got to flip that back on because they've got to be the backup to the other dispatcher. And then here all of a sudden they're hearing 5 radio channels in 2 ears plus their phone system. And it gets very overwhelming.
It is definitely not a job for someone who is unable to multitask.
I joke with them all the time that, my dispatching experience was when there was a push-button telephone, 3 radio channels. Worst thing we were doing was we were cooking for the prisoners at the same time. That was our multitasking. But
well, back then, the cell phones weren't everywhere. So if there was a wreck, you wouldn't have 20 people calling at once. Someone would have to drive to a business or their home and call from their house phone. So that has to have dramatically increased the volume of calls.
It sure has. I guess the one thing that I see as a huge benefit is at the time that early on in my career, when I did spend some time in the dispatch and in the detention center, we didn't have 911. And then we saw the 911 come into existence, but it was strictly a phone number was all you got. So we were still having to be very diligent to get address information and directions. They at least have that benefit of, but even with the cell phones, sometimes we'll get a cell phone call in dispatch and it'll give them an approximate address, but it's not accurate. Right. We have spent hours on different occasions trying to pinpoint a cell phone that made a call and they lost contact with the caller because that ping, as we call it, is only accurate to a certain number of feet, not precise.
And when you're on foot trying to find that exact location of the call, that can take a long time with just a ping. But it's good to have it as an approximate location.
It is, but we had an incident here a few months back where we had a gentleman who'd been reported as missing. Little did we know, the Highway Patrol, he'd been in an accident a few days earlier. Wasn't something that the sheriff's office had handled directly. So we received a call from the family about him being missing. We started pinging his cell phone, and it kept giving us a ping over around MGM Breaks, the river over there, and we kept going for 2 days, searching the woods over there and around. And it turns out the gentleman's car had been towed over here to Dickey's Wrecker Service, and it was sitting in his lot. And that was the difference in the directions of the ping. And so even though you're that close, you're so far away.
Yeah, and that technology is improving. I know they've made a lot of advances. I can sit at home and pull up the Maps app on my phone, and it pretty much shows me what room of the house I'm in now. But that's not all implemented into the 911 system at this time, but just based on Google Maps and Apple Maps and things like that, I know there's improvements still coming. The fact that, 20 years ago, we used to unfold these road maps to get somewhere, and now we just speak an address into our car, and it drives us there.
And it tells us where to go. That's exactly right.
The advancement in technology, it's just going to get better and better and more accurate as time goes on. But it really is amazing. I couldn't imagine trying to find a place with a road map anymore.
No. I actually was out of town here not long ago, and my wife and I looked over and said, "What is that gentleman doing?" And he actually had a road map pulled off the side of the road and had it unfolded, and it's like, you never see that anymore.
I haven't seen that in a long time. I still see them being sold at like service stations and things like that, but I haven't actually unfolded one, or the Rand McNally Road Atlas that covered the whole country.
Yeah, marked your route on it. That doesn't happen anymore.
Even with a GPS, when it tells me to turn right in 500 feet, I still miss the road. So, I was not very good with maps at all. All right, we have a lot going on coming up. We have the 4th of July, which is just right around the corner.
It is. It'll be on us before we know it. And of course, at this time of year, we always like to remind everyone to be very safe during that time of year. We are fortunate in this area. We don't have a tremendous number of fireworks accidents, but we have had our fair share. And, we try to remind everyone that as North Carolina has allowed certain types of fireworks to be legal, we still need to be very cautious with them. Even the lower powered ones that are legal here in North Carolina are still dangerous. We have had a few instances where, someone's let a firecracker or a bottle rocket go off too close to their head or face and had some burns or some other injuries. And, we just don't want to see anything tragic happen. So we remind everyone to be very responsible and to use those fireworks in a safe and enjoyable manner.
And also consider your neighbor's property, too. If there's a ball of fire flying across the sky that may land on your neighbor's property, that's probably not a good thing.
That's true. Unfortunately, a lot of times alcohol becomes involved in the situations that do go bad and causes poor judgment. But remember, things not only like respect for your neighbor's property, but also respect for them as far as just because you're up at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning enjoying the holiday doesn't mean that those people maybe don't have to go to work the next day,
right.
Or that they have medical issues, or they're just not people, and they may not want to hear your fireworks and hooping and hollering all night. Mm-hmm. And that's probably one of the number one complaints that we get in the 4th of July holiday is noise complaints.
Right.
And it's not just from the actual fireworks, but it's from the group of people that are enjoying them, that are, hooping and hollering and carrying on. And, we often forget that in these hills, sound carries a long way.
Mm-hmm. And also one of the busiest times I have as far as posting missing pets on Facebook is July 5th. The fireworks scare a lot of the neighbor pets, and they go running off. And so before the 4th of July, please make sure that your pets have name tags with phone numbers on them, maybe the microchip, or just better yet, keep them contained the night of the 4th of July so you don't lose your pets on the 4th of July, because those fireworks, I know my dogs don't like even a slight hint of thunder. They start crawling under my desk watching me work from home.
Yeah, it's, there's a whole host of things that come with that holiday, and just be mindful of those things. Be as safe and careful as you can, and enjoy it, but enjoy it with respect of the others.
Well, you mentioned about the laws in North Carolina, and a lot of people between North Carolina, Georgia, and Tennessee, since we live on the state line, certain things are allowed in North Carolina. A lot of people go across the state line and buy fireworks because they can sell, I guess, more powerful stuff over in Tennessee. But you guys aren't really out just to give violations if they bought something across the state line. What exactly are the differences in state laws, or does anybody know?
There is a difference. ATF and the North Carolina laws regulate fireworks by the amount of powder that's in them, mm-hmm. and whether they give specific of what the law calls rapport, which is how big is the bang, basically. North Carolina's first allowing of fireworks was could be no fireworks that had any rapport. So you could have bottle rockets that whizzed through the air, but they couldn't bang. You could have Twizzlers or the sparklers and those kinds of things. And that's still where North Carolina laws lay. Now, you go to Tennessee and you can almost buy what I call professional mm-hmm. fireworks. They're much larger, make a big bang, that's where the difference comes. And of course, the sheriff's office goal is not as much concerned about whether or not someone's violating those laws as much as it is the safety and the noise and the complaints that come from the other citizens. Right. Now, obviously, we have had a few occasions where we've went out and warned someone that, you're violating the law, and we've confiscated their fireworks, or sometimes we've had to go back a couple of times, and so we've written them a citation for illegal possession of fireworks or for violation of the noise ordinance. And that's not our goal. Our goal is to get everybody to be neighborly, responsible, and to not get hurt.
All right. Well, we've been talking last several weeks, and we'll continue talking about the eclipse for the next 2 months. A lot of planning and preparation still going into preparing for August 21st. Let's hear it from your perspective.
Well, the sheriff and I talked extensively right before he left to go on vacation that no matter how much we prepare for the eclipse, it's an unknown. It's not an event that we've ever had here before. It's not like preparing for a ball game or a concert where you know how many numbers of tickets are being sold, and you can make a good guess of how many cars are going to be here. We've been meeting monthly, and on a few months bi-monthly with the emergency management folks, as well as other law enforcement agencies with the DOT, and our problem is we just can't come up with a number of what we expect. We've talked with people that have been involved with these eclipses across the country in the past, and they give us what their past experiences are, but then they'll also tell us right off the bat that this one's a little bit different because it's the first total solar eclipse that there's been in 29 or 30 years. So for the last several years, what they've been dealing with are only partial eclipses. So there's so many variables, but what we're looking at from the sheriff's office is planning for the worst case and hoping for the best case.
It's one of those things where we're not the only place in the country that's going to have the eclipse. It pretty cuts a path through our country, but it's been promoted quite a bit here that this is a great place to come for the totality.
That's correct, and we're going to be in that area that has the longest totality. We've talked to some of these folks that are involved in eclipse chasing, much like storm chasing, and there's even some discussion about some of them that will go into an adjoining state to watch the eclipse there, and then will travel here as fast as they can get to here to watch it a second time. So it's just, there's so much unknown. We received some reports from DOT. They've done some traffic studies trying to make some estimates as to what it will do to our traffic flow in the area, and they've made some best guesses. But again, with the unknown as to how much traffic we'll have, it's just totally up in the air.
Will there be any changes in our traffic pattern? Will there be signs up trying to direct people to things?
There's been discussion of that, of putting up some message boards. There's also been some discussion of, potentially would DOT need to maybe reprogram the traffic lights for a period of time to keep the traffic flowing so that it doesn't back up from one intersection to the next, and all that's still in the planning and speculative stages as to what they will or won't need to do. Of course, at the report I looked at that came in this week, one of their biggest concerns is downtown. We already know we have a congestion problem every day in downtown. So if we add several thousand cars, what's it going to be like at the light at the center in town and some of these others that are on the business route with the 2-lane roads versus the 4-lane. So who knows what we're going to have.
Then there's the planning where if there's a true emergency where a lot of people need to respond, emergency crews, and traffic is at a standstill, how do you get there?
Well, that's something that we've already discussed with our personnel. We've already had some in-house meetings. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had a meeting with our patrol staff, and we're encouraging them and as well as our dispatch staff to be thinking outside of the box. Okay, normally you would travel this route to get to this point. Well, if we have a traffic backup like we did with the opening day of the casino, then the better route might be to take the 2-lane or to take a back road route to get to a specific location. One thing that I think maybe will help is the fact that it's not going to be all concentrated and everybody trying to get into one location like it was with the casino. It'll be across the county. But again, we're going to have at least 3 event sites that are going to have a lot of people trying to funnel into here at the park in Murphy and at Andrews and at the community college. So we will have some areas that will be congested with those folks trying to all get in and out of one location at one time.
Do you have any estimated numbers how many people were trying to get into the casino on the opening day?
The rough guess we were given was somewhere, it was a range of 3,000 to 5,000.
And how many people are expected to be here during the eclipse?
We have been told for Andrews to expect somewhere between 10 and 15,000, 3,000 to 5,000 here. We're rough guessing in the county to expect 20,000+ visitors. Some of the DOT studies are looking at a 33% increase and a 66% increase are some of the numbers they used. So you're looking at somewhere in the 30,000 range, give or take, of extra vehicles in the county.
And the things that I'm looking at too, from just as a resident living here, I go out to eat quite a bit. That's probably not going to be the best night to find a table at a local restaurant. Also, the gas stations, they may, with all I don't know if they're going to have extra surplus of gasoline, but you may want to fill up the week before the eclipse or a couple of days before that happens. And the other thing that really concerns me too is, we don't have a lot of extra cell towers around the area, so there's going to be some interruption in cell phone calls, people who use the internet over the Wi-Fi, the towers. So there may be some backup or just disruption of communication services there. So all that has to be taken into consideration too.
It does, and that's something that we rely heavily on is the cell phone communications, both for voice communications, but we use the data services to transmit calls and information back and forth to our patrol cars on their mobile data terminals. So that's something we've discussed as well, as how is that going to affect us? Are there going to be some of our communication services that just won't work at all, and we need to go back to some old school way of doing things? And those are all things that we just don't know the answer to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think Teresa Kreisman and I joked that I may be sitting over there with her on that day in case we need to broadcast something on the radio for public safety, or or on our Facebook page as well, if we can get online.
If you can get access to it, and that's very true. And one of the things that we've discussed and concerned about is making sure that our residents, the people that come in, know why they're coming here and they know what the event's about. But we have people that don't stay in tune to some of these things, and they're just not interested necessarily in the latest news or whatever, and they're going to try to come to town to eat or get gas, and they're going to just fall into the middle of this huge mess. Hopefully we'll go on the good end of things and things will go smoothly, but we would be remiss if we didn't prepare for the worst.
I think it was Barbara Hughes who mentioned on the radio last week that for our local residents, the best place to see the eclipse is from their front yard. Yeah. For local residents.
That's right.
From your front yard is the best place to see it.
And there's a lot of discussion of that. If you don't have to get out, don't. It's much like we say when it comes a heavy snow or some flooding or some of the other weather events we have. Unless you just have to travel, it's probably a day to stay home.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot of tourists in the area on August 21st, and probably that whole week. Probably people coming here to stay for a couple of days, just on vacation or whatever, and just want to be here whenever that happens. It only happens once every how many years, a total eclipse?
It's somewhere around 30 years, I think.
30 years, so it's pretty much almost once or twice in a lifetime thing. And let's see, the last time it happened, I remember when I think it was elementary school, there was a partial eclipse here, but we didn't have the total. And I forgot where I was going with this already. As my brain is getting older, things like that happen to slip my mind.
Well, I think where you're going with that was, you're going to have the people that are going to be coming here because it's a once in a lifetime.
Right.
And they look at the area and go, well, while I'm here, we can enjoy the mountains, we can enjoy the rivers and the lakes, and so they turn it into a vacation week. So we have reports from the Chamber of Commerce and the tourism folks that most all of the hotels are already booked for that week. As well as most all of the rental cabins. So,
where I was going was, do you think it's going to bring in a certain type of person? I know, like Roswell, they have all the people going there to look at aliens and the aluminum foil hats and things like that, or then the people that may say that's end of time, the eclipse. Or is it just a general interest type thing?
I think we're going to see a wide mix from what we've talked with some of the folks that are familiar with these eclipse events. Is you're going to have the true scientist folks that are going to come from a scientific standpoint to photograph and video and document. Then you're going to have the casual observer it's once in a lifetime event. Hey, I'm going to take my kids to see this. And then I think we'll probably have a few of the ones that are going to say, whether it's end of times or aliens are coming. I'm sure we'll have our share of all.
There will be diversity here in our area.
Correct.
That week. And again, that's going to be August 21st, if anybody wants to mark that on your calendar so you can be well prepared and versed on what's going to be happening or may be happening, depending on how many people show up.
That's exactly right. It's a real unknown.
It's an unknown, but again, like you said, we don't know, but we can plan for the worst.
That's right.
All right. Well, I see our time is coming and going. Anything you want to mention before we close out for the show?
I think we're good. It's as always. I enjoy coming and spending this time with you, Tim.
Come back anytime.
Yes,
I enjoyed it as well.
All right.
All right. This is 105.5 FM, 1320 AM, cable TV channel 25, and worldwide at country.am. Stay tuned. We have Pastor Odd Brown coming up in just a moment.